A pleasant day to everyone. I'm Isel Cape reporting about the El Filibusterismo by Rizal, and now here are the concept grounding of the novel. El Filibusterismo, also known by its alternative English title The Reign of Greed, is the second novel written by the Philippine national hero Jose Rizal. It is the sequel to Noli Me Tangere, and like the first book was written in Spanish, it was first published in 1891 in GEC. The novel centers of the Noli Elfil ideology's main character, Crisostomo Ibarra, now returning for vengeance as Simon. The novel's dark theme departs dramatically from the previous novel's hopeful and romantic atmosphere, signifying Ibarra's resort to solving country's issues through violent means after his previous attempt in reforming the country's system made no effect and seemed impossible with the corrupt attitude of the Spaniards toward the Filipinos. The novel, along with its predecessor, was banned in some parts of the Philippines as a result of their portrayals of the Spanish government's abuses and corruption. These novels, along with Rizal's involvement in organizations that aim to address and reform the Spanish system and its issues, led to Rizal's exile to Tapitan and eventual execution. Both the novel and its predecessor, along with Rizal's last poem, are now considered Rizal's literary masterpieces. Both of Rizal's novels had a profound effect on the Philippine society in terms of views about national identity, the Catholic faith, and its influence on the Filipinos' choice, and the government's issues in corruption, abuse of power, and discrimination. And on a larger scale, these issues related to the effect of colonization on the people's lives and the cause of independence. These novels later on indirectly became the inspiration to start the Philippine Revolution. Throughout the Philippines, the reading of both the novel and its predecessor is now mandatory for high school students throughout the archipelago, although it is now read using English, Filipino, and the Philippines' regional languages. And now let's hear the plot of the novel by Miss Cyril Fronda.
In the events of the previous novel, Crisostomo Ibarra, a reform-minded mestizo who tried to establish a modern school in his hometown of San Diego and marry his childhood sweetheart, was falsely accused of rebellion and presumed dead after a shootout following his escape from prison. Elias, his friend who was also a reformer, sacrificed his life to give Crisostomo a chance to regain his treasure and flee the country, and hopefully continue their crusade for reforms from abroad. After a 13-year absence from the country, the identity of Simon, a corrupt whose objective is to drive the government to commit as much abuse as possible in order to drive people into revolution. Simon goes from town to town, presumably to sell his jewels. In San Diego, he goes to the Ibarra Mausoleum to retrieve more of his treasure, but accidentally runs into Basilio, who was then also in the mausoleum, visiting his mother's grave. In the years since the death of his mother, Basilio had been serving as Capitan Tiago's servant in exchange for being allowed to study. He is now an aspiring doctor on his last year at university, as well as heir to Capitan Tiago's wealth. When Basilio recognizes Simon as Crisostomo Ibarra, Simon reveals his motives to Basilio and offers him a place in his plans. Too secure of his place in the world, Basilio declined. At Barrio Sagpang, in the town of Tiani, Simon stays at the house of the village's cabeza de barangay, Tales. Having suffered misfortune after misfortune in recent years, Cabezang Tales is unable to resist the temptation to steal Simon's revolver and join the bandits. In Los Baños, Simon joins his friend, the Capitan General, who is then taking a break from a hunting excursion. In a friendly game of cards with him and his cronies, Simon raises the stakes higher and higher and half-jokingly secures blank or deportation, imprisonment, and summary execution from the Capitan General. In Manila, Simon meets with Quiroga, a wealthy Chinese businessman and aspiring consul general for the Chinese Empire. Quiroga is heavily in Simon's debt, but Simon offers him a steep discount if Quiroga does him a favor: to store Simon's massive arsenal of rifles in Quiroga's warehouses, to be used presumably for extortion activities with Manila's ally. Quiroga, who hated guns, reluctantly agrees. During the Quiapo Fair, a talking heads exhibit ostensibly organized by a certain Mr. Leeds but secretly commissioned by Simon is drawing popular acclaim. Padre Bernardo Salvi, now chaplain of the Convent of the Poor Clares, attends one of the performances. The exhibit is set in Ptolemaic Egypt but features a tale that closely resembled that of Crisostomo Ibarra and Maria Clara and their fate under Salvi. The show ends with an ominous vow of revenge. Deeply overcome with guilt and fear, Salvi recommends the show be banned, but not before Mr. Leeds sailed for Hong Kong. Months pass, and the night of Simon's revolution comes. Simon visits Basilio in Tiago's house and tries to convince him again to join his revolution. Simon's plan is for a cannon volley to be fired, at which point Cabezang Tales, now a bandit who calls himself Matanglawin, and Simon, who managed to deceive and recruit a sizable Raj force among the government troops, will lead their forces into the city. The leaders of the church, the university, scores of bureaucrats, the Capitan General himself, as well as the bulk of officers guarding them are all conveniently located in one location. The theater, where a controversial and much hype performance of Les Cloches de Corneville is taking place, while Simon and Matanglawin direct their forces. Basilio and several others are to force open the door of the Convent of the Poor Clares and rescue Maria Clara. However, Basilio reports to Simon that Maria Clara died just that afternoon, killed by the travels of monastic life under Salvi, who always lusted after her. Simon, driven by grief, aborts the attack and becomes crestfallen throughout the night. It will be reported later on that he suffered an accident that night, leaving him confined to his. The following day, posters threatening violence to the leaders of the university and the government are found at the university doors. A reform-oriented student group to which Basilio belongs is named the primary suspects. The members are arrested. They are eventually freed through the intercession of relatives, except for Basilio, who is an orphan and has no means to pay for his. During his imprisonment, he learns that Capitan Tiago has died, leaving him with nothing. But Tiago's will be actually forged by Padre Irene, Tiago's spiritual advisor, who also supplies him with opium. His childhood sweetheart has committed suicide to avoid getting raped by the parish priest when she tried asking for help on Basilio's behalf, and that he has missed his graduation and will be required to study for another year, but now with no funds to go by. Released through the intercession of Simon, a darkened, disillusioned Basilio joins Simon's cause wholeheartedly. Simon, meanwhile, has been organizing a new revolution, and he reveals his plans to a now committed Basilio. The wedding of Juanito Pelaez and Paulita Gomez will be used to coordinate the attack upon the city. As the Pelaez and Gomez families are prominent members of the Manila elite, leaders of the church and civil government are invited to the reception. The Captain General, who declined to extend his tenure despite Simon's urging, is leaving in 2 days and is the guest of honor. Simon will personally deliver a pomegranate-shaped crystal lamp as a wedding gift. The lamp is to be placed on a plinth at the reception venue and will be bright enough to illuminate the entire hall, which was also walled with mirrors. After some time, the light will flicker as if to go out. When someone attempts to raise the wick, a mechanism hidden within the lamp containing fulminated mercury will detonate, igniting the lamp, which is actually filled with nitroglycerin, killing everyone in an enormous blast. At the sound of the explosion, Simon's mercenaries will attack, reinforced by Matanglawin and his bandits, who will descend upon the city from the surrounding hills. Simon postulates that at the chaos, the masses already worked to a panic by the government's heavy-handed response to the Poster incident, as well as rumors of German ships at the bay, to lend their firepower to any uprising against the Spanish government, will step out in desperation to kill or be killed. Basilio and a few others are to put themselves at their head and lead them to Quiroga's warehouses, where Simon's guns are still being kept. The plan thus finalized, Simon gives Basilio a loaded revolver and sends him away to await further instructions. Basilio walks the streets for hours and passes by his old home, Captain Tiago's riverside house on Analog Street. He discovers that this was to be the reception venue. Juanito Pelaez father bought Tiago's house as a gift for the newlywed couple. Sometime later, he sees Simon enter the house with a lamp, then hastily exit the house and board his carriage. Basilio begins to move away but sees Isagani, his friend and Paulita Gomez's former lover, sadly looking at Paulita through the window. Noting how close they were to the condemned house, Basilio tries to head Isagani off, but Isagani was too dazed with grief to listen to him. In desperation, Basilio reveals to Isagani how the house is set to explode at any time then. But when Isagani still refuses to heed him, Basilio flees, leaving Isagani to his fate. Seeing Basilio's demeanor, Isagani is temporarily rather blatantly unnerved by the revelation. Isagani rushes into the house, seizes the lamp leaving the hall in darkness, and throws it into the river. With this, Simon's second revolution fails. In the following days, as the trappings at the reception venue are torn down, sacks containing gunpowder are discovered hidden under the boards all over the house. Simon, who had directed the renovations, is exposed, with his friend, the Captain General, having left for Spain. Simon is left without his protector and is forced to flee. A manhunt ensues and Simon is chased as far away as the shores of the Pacific. He then spends the rest of his days hiding in ancestral mansion of Padre Florentino, Isagani's uncle. One day, the lieutenant of the local Guardia Civil informs Florentino that he received an order to arrest Simon that night. In response, Simon drinks the slow-acting poison which he always kept in a compartment of his treasure chest. Simon then makes his final confession to Florentino, first revealing his true name to Florentino's shock. He goes on to narrate how 13 years before, as Crisostomo Ibarra, he lost everything in the Philippines despite his good intentions. Crisostomo swore vengeance, retrieving some of his family's treasure, alias buried in Ibarra Mausoleum in the forest. Crisostomo fled to foreign lands and engaged in trade. He took part in the war in Cuba, aiding first one side and then another, but always profiting. There, Crisostomo Ibarra met the Captain General who was then a major, whose goodwill he won first by loans of money, and afterwards by covering for his criminal activity. Crisostomo bribed his way to secure the major's promotion to Captain General and his assignment to the Philippines. Once in the country, Crisostomo then used him as a blind tool and incited him to all kinds of injustice, availing himself of the Captain General's insatiable lust for gold. The confession is long and arduous, and night has fallen when Crisostomo finished. In the end, Florentino assures the dying man of God's mercy, but explains that his revolution failed because he has chosen means that God cannot sanction. Crisostomo bitterly accepts the explanation and dies. Realizing that the arresting officers were confiscate Chrysostomus' possessions, Florentino divests him of his jewels and cast them into the Pacific, proclaiming that God will provide means to draw them out if they should be needed for righteous causes. God will provide the means to draw them out, and that they will not be used to either distort justice or incite grace. These are the major characters of El Filibusterismo. First is Simon, Crisostomo Ibarra in disguise, presumed dead at the end of Noli Me Tangere. Ibarra has returned as the wealthy jeweler Simon. His appearance is described as being tanned, having a sparse beard, long white hair, and large blue tinted glasses. Next is Basilio. Basilio is a son of Sisa and another character from Noli Me Tangere. In the event of El Fili, he is an aspiring and so far successful physician on his last year at university and was waiting for his license to be released upon his graduation. After his mother's death in Dinoli, he applied as a servant in Capitan Tiago's household in exchange for food, lodging, and being allowed to study. Eventually, he took up medicine, and with Tiago having retired from society, he also became the manager of Tiago's vast estate. Next is Isagani. Isagani is Basilio's friend. He is described as a poet, taller, and more robust than Basilio, although younger. He is the nephew of Padre Florentino, but is also rumored to be Florentino's son with his old sweetheart before he was ordained as a priest. During the events of the novel, Isagani is finishing his studies at the Ateneo Municipal and is planning to take medicine. A member of the student association, Isagani is proud and naive, and tends to put himself on the spot when his ideals are affronted. Next, Father Florentino. Father Florentino is Isagani's uncle and a retired priest. Florentino was the son of a wealthy and influential Manila family. He entered the priesthood at the insistence of his mother. As a result, he had to break an affair with a woman he loved, and in despair devoted himself instead to his parish. When the 1872 Cavite Mutiny broke out, he promptly resigned from the priesthood, fearful of drawing unwanted attention. Next is Father Fernandez, a Dominican who was a friend of Isagani. Following the incident with the posters, he invited Isagani to a dialogue, not so much as a teacher with his student, but as a friar with a Filipino. Capitan Tiago. Don Santiago de los Santos, Maria Clara's stepfather, having several land holdings in Pampanga, Binondo, and Laguna, as well as taking ownership of the Ibarra's vast estate, Tiago still fell into depression following Maria's entry into the convent. He alleviated this by smoking opium, which quickly became an uncontrolled vice, exacerbated by his association with Padre Irene, who regularly supplied him with the substance. Captain General is the highest-ranking official in the Philippines during the Spanish colonial period. The Captain General in El Fili is Simon's friend and confidant. He is described as having an insatiable lust for gold. Simon met him when he was still a major during the 10 Years' War in Cuba. He secured the major's friendship and promotion to Captain General through bribe. Father Bernardo Salvi. Father Salvi, the former parish priest of San Diego in Noli Me Tangere, and now the director and chaplain of the Santa Clara Convent. The epilogue of the Noli implies that Salvi regularly rapes Maria Clara when he is present at the convent. In El Fili, he is described as her confessor. In spite of reports of Ibarra's death, Salvi believes that he is still alive and lives in constant fear of his revenge. Father Milion. a Dominican who serves as a physics professor in the University of Santo Tomas. Quiroga, a Chinese businessman who aspired to be consul for China in the Philippines. Simon coerced Quiroga into hiding weapons inside the latter's warehouses in preparation for the revolution. Next, Don Custodio. Custodio de la Salazar E. Sanchez de Montero Dondo, a famous contractor who was tasked by the Captain General to develop the Students' Association's proposal for an academy for the teaching of Spanish, but was then also under pressure from the priests not to compromise their prerogatives as monopolizers of instruction. Next, Ben Zaib, a columnist for the Manila Spanish newspaper El Grito de la Integridad. Ben Zaib in his pen name and is an anagram for Ibanez, an alternate spelling of his last name Ibanez. His first name is not mentioned. Ben Zaib is said to have the looks of a friar, who believes that in Manila they think because he thinks he is deeply patriotic, sometimes to the point of jingoism. Father Camora, the parish priest of Tiani, Ben Zaib's regular foil. He is said to look like an artilleryman in counterpoint to Ben Zaib's friar looks. He stops at nothing to mock and humiliate Ben Zaib's liberal pretensions. In his own parish, Camora has a reputation for unrestrained lustfulness. He drives Julie into suicide after attempting to rape her inside the convent. For his misbehavior, he was detained in a luxurious riverside villa just outside Manila. Father Irene, Capitan Tiago's spiritual advisor. Along with Custodio, Irene is severely criticized as a representative of priests who allied themselves with temporal authority for the sake of power and monetary gain. Irene embellished stories of panic following the outlawing of the Student Association. Basilio was part of it, hastening Capitan Tiago's death. Placido Penitente, a student of University of Santo Tomas who had a distaste for study and would have left school if it were not for his mother's pleas for him to stay. He clashes with his physics professor, who then accuses him of being a member of the student association, whom the friars despise. Following the confrontation, he meets Simeon at the Quiapo Fair. He is later seen with the former schoolmaster of San Diego, who was now Simon's bomb maker. Paulita Gomez, the girlfriend of Isagani and the niece of Doña Victorina, the old Indio who passes herself off as a peninsular, who is the wife of the quack doctor Tiburcio de Espadanya. In the end, she and Isagani part ways, Paulita believing she will have no future if she marries him. She eventually marries Juanito Palaez. Let us meet the characters from Barrio Sagpang. First is Cabezang Tales, Telesforo Juan de Dios, a former cabeza of Barrio Sagpang in Tiani. He was a sugarcane planter who cleared lands he thought belonged to no one, losing his wife and elder daughter in the endeavor. When the Dominican took over his farm, he fought to his last money to have it retained in his possession. While his suit against the Dominicans was ongoing, he was kidnapped by the bandits while he was out of patrolling his fields. He later joined the bandits and became one of their fiercest commanders. Tandang Celo, his father, would later on join his band after the death of Julie. Next is Tandang Celo. Tandang Celo is the father of Cabezang Tales and grandfather of Tano in Julie, a deer hunter and later on a broom maker. He and Tales took in the young, sick Basilio, who was then fleeing from the Guardia Civil. On Christmas Day, when Julie left to be with her mistress, Celo suffered some form of a stroke that impaired his ability to speak. After After Julie's suicide, Cello left town permanently, taking with him his hunting spear. Juliana de Jos, the girlfriend of Basilio, and the youngest daughter of Cabezang Tales. When Tales was captured by bandits, Julie petitioned her mana Penchang to pay for his ransom. In exchange, she had to work as Penchang's maid. Basilio ransomed her and bought a house for her family. When Basilio was sent to the prison, Julie approached Tiani's curate, Padre Camorra, for help. When Camorra tried to rape her instead, Julie jumped to her death from the church tower. Next, Tano, Cabezang Tales' son, second to Lucia, who died in childhood. He was nicknamed Carolino after returning from Guardia Civil training in the Carolines. His squad was escorting prisoners through a road that skirted a mountain when they were ambushed by bandits. In the ensuing battle, Tano, the squad's sharpshooter, killed a surrendering bandit from a distance, not knowing it was his own grandfather, Cello. Hermana Penchang, the one among the rich folks of Tiani who lent Julie money to ransom Cabezang Tales from the bandits. In return, Julie will serve as her maid until the money was paid off. Penchang is described as a pious woman who speaks Spanish. However, her piety was clouded over by the virtues taught by the friars. Hermana Bali, Julie's mother figure and counselor. She accompanied Julie in her efforts to secure Cabezang Tales' ransom and later on Basilio's release. Bali was a panginera, a gambler, who was performed religious services in a Manila convent. When Tales was captured by bandits, it was Bali who suggested to Julie the idea to borrow money from Tiani's wealthy citizens, payable when Tales' legal dispute over his farm was won.
Student Association for the Teaching of Spanish. Makaraig, the leader. He is described as wealthy, with his own coach, driver, and set of horses. He is said to own several houses, and that he is lending one to serve as the schoolhouse for their planned Spanish language academy. After the outlawing of the group, he was the first to post bail. He then left the country after his release. Sandoval, a peninsular who had come to Manila as a government employee and was finishing his studies, and who had completely identified himself with the cause of the Filipino students. After the outlawing of the group, he still managed to pass his courses through sheer oratorical skill. Pekson, described as chubby, pessimistic, and having an annoying grin. He is Sandoval's regular foil when Sandoval launches into any kind of patriotic, optimistic speech. After they received disappointing news about their Spanish language academy project, it was Pekson who suggested a torch-lit dinner at the Pansiteria Macanista de Buen Gusto, just a block away from the Binonda Church and Convent, served by naked Chinese waiters. From there, Sandoval and Pekson became more gracious to each other. Tadeo, a truant and charlatan who regularly dreamed of an eternal holiday from school, but was all the same beloved by professors and past courses. Alongside Manila resident, he is seen having fun by telling outrageous stories about himself to a newcomer student from his home province. After the outlawing of the group, he alone seemed to welcome imprisonment as it meant not going to school. His holiday realized at last. He celebrated by setting up a bonfire using his book upon his release. Juanito Pelaez, Isagani's rival for Paulita Gomez's affection. He was the son of a Timoteo Pelaez, a metalworks trader. He was a favorite of his professors. A regular prankster, he was said to have developed a hump by playing some trick and then hunching behind his classmates. He paid his dues to the student association, but but broke away just as easily when the association was outlawed. Following Isagani's arrest, Paulita breaks off from Isagani to marry Juanito.
And that ends our report entitled El Filibusterismo.